Hi, I'm Rowan from HT Walter, and today we're going to be doing a butchery demonstration on pork shoulders. Coming underneath the blade bone, face up the ends, grate the tip of the knife against the bone.
3, 2, 1.
So I've got two pork shoulders to look at because I want to show you a few different cuts. First we're going to look at a boned and rolled pork shoulder. I'm just going to put this one out of the way for now. So with the pork shoulder, there's a couple of different sets of bones to look at. We've got the vertebrae bone, which we're going to take out first, and then we've got the blade bone that sits in the middle. So we're going to put it skin side down. Just going to get my boning knife. The first thing I'm going to do is cut along the inside of this plate bone here. Just got to be very careful, try and stay under the bone and not push through. Just loosen that all the way along. And as you do, just scraping at the bone with your blade. And always move the meat around to suit you. So what I'm trying to do is just loosen the meat around one side of the inner side of the vertebrae bone. And then once I've done that, I'm going to work on the other side. So over here, the bone is slightly different. You're going to have a flat rib and then some meat here, which you want to cut away first. Just the tip of your knife following the line of the bone as you go down. Once I've loosened that point, I'm going to work on this flat plate bone, which is just to very simply hold the joint and with your knife cut against the bone, following it round. So I'm just following that bone round and I'm trying to meet where I cut on the other side. And you see, once it's loose, it just pulls away like that. Using the weight of the meat and the bone, pulling away, I'm just going to cut down this last bit on the inside. Always pulling that bone away to let me see what I'm doing. And once I've cut it away, I'm just going to put that to one side. The next bone I'm going to look at is my blade bone. Blade bone starts here, where you met with the joint. Now at the top, it's a flat bone, and the bottom has a bone that comes round, which we need to cut round. So to start off with, I'm going to, just using the tip of my knife, work from the top of the bone, cutting through the meat and scraping along the top. So just tip of the knife's going to scrape all the way down that bone, just opening that meat out. Just lets me see what I'm going. So where I'm cutting, I'm just scraping along the top of that blade bone and just allows me to see the edges so I know where I'm going to cut next. And once I've opened that right out, I'm then going to, just with the tip of my knife, run down the sides of the bone just to loosen it up a bit more. Just cut away some trim there out of my way. The next bit is to take the bone off from the bottom. Now this is the more difficult piece because the bone's going to come in, drop down and then go up again. And I don't want to lose any of that meat. So to start off with, I'm just going to loosen around the top of the bone. and then pulling the meat away as much as I can with the tip of my knife, just scrape against the inside of the bone. Always making sure to pull the meat away so I can see where I'm going. Once I've done one side, I'm going to work on the other. This side's going to be a little bit more difficult, so going from the top, just the edge of your knife, you're just going to scrape down the bone. Always pull the meat away from the bone, helps you to see where you're going. And if you've done things right, as you pull away, it should really open up for you. And the last little bit is just to cut around the top of that bone there. And then once you've got that off, just if you've got any trim left on there, just trim it off and we can use that for sausages. And the bone can go for stock. And that's our boneless shoulder. Next thing we're going to do is tie it to a nice tight roasting joint. What I like to do is square it up. Just allows you to keep the shape better later on in the process. The first thing we're going to do is just take a nice straight trim line off there, just to take off these little last bits of bone. Don't need to take too much. Just want to straighten up that edge. We'll trim that up later as well. And then on the other side, I'm just going to cut that square to the first cut I've made. A little bit of bone left there, we'll trim that out as well. Now before we roll this, we want to score the skin as well. So just cutting about centimetre, half centimetre apart. Don't cut too deep. We don't want to slash the meat, we just want to open up that skin to the fat. So once I've finished scoring the skin, I'm going to turn it skin side down to roll it. I like to do that because what it does, it lets me see the muscles which I need to try and keep in place as I'm rolling the joint. There's more than one muscle in the shoulder and they will move around as you tie it. So with my first string, what I want to do is tie it around the thickest point of the shoulder, which will be in the middle around where all these muscles meet, and I want to try and keep that tight. I'm just going to do my butcher's knot. So the feeding string held by the bottom two fingers, top string, I just loop round and pull through. And then pull tight, push. And then just tie off the end. The next string I'm going to tie, I'm going to do a double space heading towards the thinner end of the joint. I want to pull that nice and tight, just keeping those muscles in place. And then I'm going to go back on myself, just pushing the muscle down as I go. So by tying the joint like that, what I'm doing is I'm controlling this muscle. That's to try and give me a nice even piece of meat. So as I turn it over, I'm just going to check I've got nice straight strings. I'm not always perfect at this. I just want to face up the ends to give myself a nice square joint. As always, nothing's going to waste. I just want a pretty joint. Now the test is, can I cut this in half and keep it all together? So the idea of tying it is to try and keep it nice and neat. So when you're cooking it, you keep a nice shape to it, so when you slice it, it looks good on the plate. Next, we're going to look at our other shoulder and do a few different cuts. And with the other shoulder, I want to show you how to take the pork butt off, which is the blade bone, which can be used for pulled pork. And I'm going to cut some shoulder chops. So to separate our two cuts, I'm going to cut in the middle of this bit of meat here, just coming underneath the blade bone and taking that top off. So using my steak knife, I'm just going to come in. So I'm just cutting along a seam that runs just underneath where the blade bone sits. So following that seam along the length of the shoulder, and just as I come towards the end, my knife is going to angle up and just take that blade straight off. So once I've cut through, the blade should come off, leaving you a nice layer of meat on the bottom. Now with this, you just square it up again. Just want to make it look nice. Now this would be perfect for pulled pork, roast blade, any of those slow cooked cuts. Next we're going to look at our pork shoulder chops. So what we have here is the pork neck fillet, but it's still on the bone. So the first thing I need to do is just remove this rind. I still want to leave that nice fat on there though. Just with your boning knife, you're just going to catch one end, scrape against the rind, go all the way along. You're just pulling the rind away as you go, scraping against it. Once you've got that rind off, you're just going to look at your shoulder, see if there's any little bits of bone there you don't want. You're just going to trim them up. Any bits of fat you don't want on there, make it look nice. And then we're going to cut our chops. Now, the first few chops are nice and easy to space out. You're going to go between the bones. And then once you get past that point, you're just going to work out roughly the same thickness and cut all the way down. Now with your steak knife, cut down, pull all the way along. Keeping a nice even spacing as you go down. So if you're going to cook all these together, they cook evenly. And leave you with nice portions. Now I've cut the meat, I'm going to use my saw to cut the bone. So there's my shoulder chops. It can be a beautiful cut for braising, marinating, or even barbecuing as well. So that's our shoulder of pork. A nice rolled shoulder for roasting, a pork blade or butt for pulled pork, and some neck chops for marinating and barbecuing. For more butchery demonstrations, please click the link.